State's Stand Your Ground law, that controversial law, is at the center of the Trayvon Martin killing. And Florida Governor Rick Scott has said that his own task force is going to start examining the law, but not until the Martin investigation is complete. State Senator Chris Smith says there's too much at stake to wait, so he's convening his own task force starting tomorrow. He joins us this morning from Tallahassee. Nice to see you, sir. Thanks for talking with us. You led the opposition to the Stand Your Ground law back in 2005. Do you believe that the law needs to be tweaked, or do you believe that that law needs to be scrapped altogether?
Well, I believe that it can be tweaked and still be useful in the state. I mean, Stand Your Ground and those that supported it have good intentions, but we have years of data showing the misuse of Stand Your Ground. And the problem is it was misused before the Trayvon Martin case, and the concern is it would be misused subsequent to the Trayvon Martin case. And so that's why we cannot wait to the end of the investigation, which, as you know, could take a long time. I mean, lives are at stake and public safety is at stake in Florida, and that's why we must act now.
What's the evidence, and let's put this particular case aside, but what's the evidence that there's been misuse? I know that if you look at statistics over justifiable homicides pre the law, there was an average of 12, and then after the law was instituted, that number went up to 36, so, you know, 3 times increase. Is that what you're pointing to as the clearly indicative of problems?
A case in point in Miami on January 25th, and the case was just decided about 3 weeks ago, in which a gentleman saw someone robbing his car, taking his car radio. He chased the robber a full city block and then stabbed the robber to death. And he was released and case dismissed on Stand Your Ground after he was an aggressor. And so we're getting those type of cases, and we have data showing that those types of cases where people are misunderstanding this law and it's even being misused, where people are being the aggressors and then hiding, standing behind the shield of Stand Your Ground. And that was the concern we had in 2005, that people are going to get the impression they have a license to go ahead and kill and let shooting be their first thought instead of the last resort.
Senator Smith, Will Cain, we're having this conversation right now about the Stand Your Ground law because of the Trayvon Martin case. But can you explain to me how the Stand Your Ground law applies to the Trayvon Martin case? It seems like there's 2 stories in this case. One, that George Zimmerman tracked down and stalked Trayvon Martin and killed him. The other, that George Zimmerman's life is in jeopardy and seemingly a regular self-defense claim would stand. How does Stand Your Ground have anything to do with this case?
Well, the Stand Your Ground law is a little bit of history. We've always had the castle doctrine, and everyone knows that if someone's breaking into your house or your car, you can use deadly force to defend yourself. The Stand Your Ground law is an expansion of that. We've taken it outside of the house, outside of the vehicle, so any place you're legally allowed to be, i.e. a city street, that you can use deadly force if you feel that deadly force is going to be used against you. And so the way some are interpreting it in this case is that Mr. Zimmerman was legally allowed to be in that neighborhood, and once he felt threatened, he could use deadly force. And if you look at the statute, we have it on our website, floridastandyourground.org. We have the full listing of the statute, and the fourth part of the statute, which talks about immunity from prosecution, it even says if you're the aggressor and then you feel that someone is threatening you, you can still use Stand Your Ground and use deadly force. And that's kind of the problem, is that it's being misinterpreted and interpreted in different ways. And so that's why we're convening a task force of lawyers, people that have used Stand Your Ground for 8 years, to come up with a definitive use for this law and say, okay, we need to.
So it's that particular clause that's getting you. So let's show folks the clause. Let's throw it up. A person who's not engaged in unlawful activity and who's attacked in any other place where he or she has a right to be has no duty to retreat, right? Ultimately, it's really about that line, duty to retreat, and has the right to stand his or her ground and meet force with force. So my understanding is that there are 24 states that have these Stand Your Ground laws. Florida is different, along with 3 other states, because they have that no duty to retreat clause, meaning that in other states, basically, if you can get away and you decide that you're going to, let's say, shoot anyway, you could be prosecuted, but not in the state of Florida and 3 other states. So it's really that particular clause that you're taking issue with. Is that right, sir?
In the prosecution is the big part of it. Normally, you would have a self-defense claim. If you shoot someone, and you would have to go to court and have a burden of proof for self-defense. Stand your ground give a lesser burden of proof. So in the case like, to use the Martin case, if you have two persons and no witnesses, one's dead, stand your ground shields you from prosecution because you just have to claim, I felt threatened. And that's the concern, and that's the problem we have in Florida, and that's why we have to do something now before we get more cases like this. Now that people are hearing about this, it may get the wrong impression in Florida that I can start just shooting first.
Senator Chris Smith joining us this morning. Nice to have you, sir. Thanks for talking with us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Coming up in our next half hour, we're going to talk to Natalie Jackson. She's the Martin family attorney. We'll talk about the Stand Your Ground and some of the later developments in this case. The FBI has been talking to folks, including Frank Tatty, who we had on the show yesterday, and also apparently Trayvon Martin's girlfriend, who was on the phone with him. The FBI has now had a chance to talk to